Now we're going to talk about one of the most controversial parts of Freud's theory, and it gets strange. We'll be talking to what he described as the psychosexual stages of development. Up to this point, you may have wondered, what in the world does any of this have to do with personality? Now's when we make the connection. So according to Freud, as we develop, we pass through these set psychosexual stages of development. And what happens during these stages is what forms our personality. Important thing to understand about each one of these stages is each one has what we call an erogenous zone. An erogenous zone is a part of the body that is pleasurable and produces pleasure. And at each one of these stages, there's a particular erogenous zone that is the focus. And there's also a conflict surrounding that erogenous zone that needs to be handled. Those stages are in order: the oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, the latency period, and the genital stage. You are going to want to remember the order of those. It helps in all kinds of ways, and definitely on the exam. And one way that a nice little mnemonic device you could use is some people say, on average, people like giraffes, right? Because who doesn't like giraffes? Right? On average, people like giraffes. Okay, so the first stage is the oral stage, and that is from birth to about 18 months old. In the oral stage, the erogenous zone is the mouth. That's the focus of pleasure in an infant. It feels good to suck and chew and put your mouth on everything, and that's what kids at this age do. The conflict that they experience at this stage is weaning. At what point and how does mom, of course, because everything in Freud's world was according to mom, how does mom take away the breast, the pacifier, the bottle, and transition to a more mature way of eating? And if mom doesn't do it right, we would say that that person develops a fixation. We use that term fixation at any one of these stages if something goes wrong in that conflict. And a fixation is just kind of a way of getting stuck. So someone who has an oral fixation, we would say mom somehow screwed up weaning and they're stuck in the oral stage. They still as an adult derive pleasure from things having to do with their mouth, like smoking, drinking, nail biting, excessive talking. Alcoholism, Freud believed, was the result of oral fixation. People chewing gum, all that kind of stuff. The next stage is the anal stage. In the anal stage, the erogenous zone is the anus. It's really surrounding the sphincter and the urethra, because it's all about control and being able to control your bowels and your bladder. So the focus is eliminating bodily waste. This is the age at which kiddos get potty trained, and to be able to control using the toilet is a big accomplishment. And so what we believe is kids are associating those feelings of holding in their poop or holding in their pee as a feeling of control and something to be proud of. The conflict, of course, is toilet training, and where mom can screw up is by either being way too harsh with the toilet training or being way too easy. Either one of those can result in a fixation at the anal stage, and a fixation at the anal stage has two different resulting personality types. One would be someone we call anal retentive. The other is what we call anal expulsive. Anal retentive, sometimes you've probably used this term when you've called someone anal. You probably all were calling me anal when I made you do those APA assignments and with my grading of those. But somebody with an anal retentive personality is just real orderly, right? Focused on rules. They can be stingy. They often just are, the focus is just to hold everything in. Freud said these individuals were actually literally constipated. On the opposite end of that is the anal expulsive personality, where someone's life is very chaotic and they maybe don't follow rules. It might be very, very messy. And both of those resulting personalities would occur with mom, according to Freud, somehow messing up the potty training. The next stage, is where things, I went too far, where things get really interesting, and that is the phallic stage. I think when we talked about dreams, we talked about phallic symbols. A phallic symbol, phallus, is Greek or Latin for penis. And so the phallic stage, the fact that it's named this, is a good representation of what it is. And it's a sexual relationship, a symbolic sexual relationship with an opposite sex parent. Freud was speaking of heterosexual children. Okay, so the erogenous zone now is the genitals. From 3 to 6 years old, kids figure out that these are pleasurable parts of the body, and the focus is this increased awareness of sexual feelings, awareness of self. What happens at this stage, and I'm going to go ahead and flip to the next slide, is different in boys and in girls. And in boys, this was Freud's idea, though what happens in girls was actually Carl Jung's idea, but we lump it in with Freud. But what happens in boys is he believed that boys develop what's called an Oedipus Complex. And if you know the story of Oedipus, Oedipus was, it's a myth and it's long and drawn out, but the bottom line is, as an adult, Oedipus ended up killing his father and marrying his mother. And that's really at the heart of what Freud believes happens to little boys during this stage. Little boys fall madly, deeply, head over heels in love with their moms, so much so that they want to marry them. But there's one big problem, and that's Dad. Dad stands in the way of them being with the love of their lives, that little boy getting to be with the love of his life, his mother. And so Freud says this creates a rather large conflict. And within the boy, that little id is saying, well, you could just kill the guy, right? And then you could have mom all to yourself. Well, the little boy is smart enough to realize that actually this is not such a good idea because Dad is bigger and stronger. And if I attempt to kill Dad, he'll cut my penis off. And so little boys at this stage develop castration anxiety, something that follows men through most of their lives. So because they can't kill Dad, because Dad will try to cut off their penis, it results in what Freud termed identification. And identification means that this is when the little boy says, well, I can't kill Dad, so I'm going to be like Dad, so that maybe someday I can find a woman as wonderful as my mother, right? That's identification. And that's, we definitely see, the interesting thing about this stage is we definitely see an intensification of gender roles. This is when little boys act more, doing more boy things, following Dad around, wanting to do the things that Dad does. And we see the same process in girls. The process in girls is called the Electra complex, but it has an extra little special sexist twist to it. The Electra complex is the same sort of thing. The little girl falls madly, deeply, head over heels in love with Dad, but Mom is in the way. Dang it. Can't kill Mom, but this is where it gets super sexist. But then there's also this deep anger at Mom, because this is when the little girl discovers that she doesn't have a penis, and she gets mad because she believes that Mom allowed her to be castrated. Yes, seriously, can you believe this? The result is not castration anxiety, as we see in boys. Rather, the result, Freud and other theorists said, was what we call penis envy, that little girls are very envious of boys' penis. So ultimately, it results in identification again, although I guess along with sadness because of the penis envy. And little girls then want to be more like Mom so that someday they can find someone as wonderful as their dads. If we go back to the slide before, We can see that fixation can result from this stage as well. And fixation can look in a bunch of different ways, sometimes overly dramatic. Someone may become promiscuous, very flirty, very vain, over-dependent, and apparently also a focus on masturbation.